Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome this young man, Mr. Nathan Mansfield!
I had it all. I built a multi-million-dollar business, bought $1 million house, even had a $150,000 Mercedes AMG, beautiful, sitting in my driveway. Had a wife, 3 beautiful boys that I love and adore so much. I had it all. But this time last year, I was headed to a place to end it all. You see, I had it all, but I was ready to end it all. You see, the world is a liar. The world is an absolute dirty liar. It tells you that when I get the things, the house, the car, the marriage, the kids, maybe even the white picket fence, that if and when I get it, I'll be happy. I'll be fulfilled. But to me, it seemed like the more things I accumulated, the more money I got, the more things I got, I just got even more broken inside. It was a letdown for me. And then it all crashed. Nearly 2 years ago, I finalized my second divorce. My business started to go downhill rapidly to a place I didn't know if I could hold on. I began masking my problems with alcohol, drinking every night, 1 or 2 drinks. It's not a big deal, right? That's not an alcohol problem. And I began to work 16 to 18 hours a day so that I didn't have to face the depression I was dealing with. I refused to even call it depression. It was just a hard time in my life. Until January 13th, 2021, last year, I had enough. I was at a place where I felt hopeless, a place where I didn't think I could crawl back out. It was almost as if I had gone too deep, gone too far. And so I headed northbound out of town, 85 miles an hour, to end it all, to never look back. And that night, the faith of God saved me. I didn't know it at the time, but I saw 3 numbers as I approached the garage. And that night, it was enough faith in me to abort the mission, to call it off, to come back home, to see my boys that I love so much. It was 3 numbers. It was faith in something that saved me. Faith in something that saved me. And so over the last year of my journey, my recovery journey, to being in the place that I am now, happy and fulfilled, and other things, I've learned a few things about life that I want to share with you tonight. And it's what I call the 3 F's of life. The 3 F's of life. The first thing you got to know is that you got to have faith in something bigger than you. For a long time, it was my empire, my success, my dream. But also with that came my pain, my suffering. I didn't have faith in much more than myself. The second thing is you need family. And I don't necessarily mean blood relation. You need people that you can count on and people that count on you. You need deep, meaningful relationships. And the last thing you need is fortitude. Some of you may not know exactly what the word fortitude means, but it means that you can persevere, have courage through strength and painful times in your life. So on this journey to recovery for me, I've had to embody the 3 F's: faith, family, and fortitude. Now, if you're going through a hard time, maybe you've been through one, maybe you're sitting in one right now. Maybe you're at a place that you don't know if it's worth it anymore. Maybe you're really hurting. I want to encourage you to listen up. And if you're not, you never know what the world is going to bring you. So I want you to listen up, pay attention, because this saved my life. The first point I want to talk about is having a faith in something bigger than yourself. As I explained, I'm an entrepreneur. Been a business owner for 9 years, also served 13 years active duty in the military. But in that, I became over-reliant upon me. I did everything for me. I told you I had the $1 million house. I had the multi-million-dollar business. It was my empire. And while that came with beautiful pride and accolades, the reverse side of that was really painful. When things really weren't going my way, I had to feel the burden of life on me, the heaviness on me. And let me tell you, walking alone without a faith in something bigger than you, it gets really, really heavy. It gets really, really heavy. So on my journey to end my life last year, I was driving northbound on a Wednesday night towards Austin on I-35. As I got a few minutes down the road with no end destination in mind and not a clue how or when this life would end, I was pretty certain that it was going to be over this night. And so, driving northbound I-35, I put on one of my favorite piano melodies to hopefully soothe my soul, maybe have an internal negotiation with my life. And as I put on the song, I started to flash back all of my life from being a child, playing baseball with my dad, to my first love, to joining the military, moving overseas to England, getting married, seeing my children being born, and understanding a love that I could never know was possible. And my eyes began to tear up and well up, and I began to cry. And although I didn't believe in God at this point in my life, I was hoping that something would happen, that maybe I had some sort of faith that would pull me away from this destructive part of my life. So as I'm driving down the interstate, I can't see, my eyes are completely blurred from my tears. I began to scream out my windshield, "God help me! God, give me a sign. God, help me." I was so desperate for something, and there was just an ounce of faith inside of me that was keeping me holding on. I didn't know what it was, but something kept me holding on. And so I continued to drive northbound with still no destination in mind. I pulled into Austin, Texas, as I saw the skyline off in the distance. And I remember being there that summer and how beautiful the skyline was. And so I wanted to go see that. If this is going to be my last night, I want to see something beautiful in my life before I end it. And so I pulled through a dark parking lot. I pulled out into the grass, got out of my car. It was a cold night, but the stars were gleamingly beautiful. And I looked across the lake, and I could see the skyline. And it reminded me, it was a metaphor of my life in that moment, that while I was sitting in this dark, cold, alone place, not that far in front of me, I could almost touch the skyline. The energy, the lights, I could almost just feel the contrast, the difference of what that would feel like to have that and not this. And it gave me a little bit more faith. So I thought that maybe if I drive a little bit closer to the skyline, that maybe I could have a little more negotiation with my life. And so I drove down to 6th Street and pulled into a parking garage. And it was a downward spiraling parking garage that went down and down and down. It seemed like forever. And it also reminded me of my life that during this season of depression, you know that if you've gone through this, that sometimes it feels like you just keep going down and down and down, and you never know when it's going to end. And finally, I hit the bottom of the parking garage. I got out of my car, still not knowing the destination in mind, and began to walk in front of me. And as I walked, approaching 2 glass doors, I saw the last parking spot in front of my feet, and as I looked down, there were 3 numbers painted on the asphalt. 4, 4, 4. Now, I don't know if 444 means anything to you, but to me, in this stage of my depression, for 3 to 4 months, I kept seeing this number. I would see it when I woke up. I would see it throughout the day. I would see it on billboards. I would see the number 444 everywhere. And so one day I became very inquisitive, and I said, what does this mean? And I found out that it means that angels were watching over me. I don't know if that's the truth or not, but it became my truth. And so every time I saw the number, it was a little bit of faith that maybe my stepfather in heaven, or maybe my grandparents, maybe my best friend who died early in my life, maybe they were giving me a sign and said, Nathan, just hold on one more day. You're going to get through this. Be stronger. You're going to make it through this. And so it was my faith. And so in the moment where I'm moments just inches away from ending my life, a sign is presented to me that was no coincidence. It said, Nathan, abort the mission. Go back home. Go back home and see your boys. Go give them a hug, give them love, go see your family. And so we got to have a faith in something that's bigger than us. I believe that night that God saved me. It was no coincidence or happenstance. It was the fact that there was a God that was looking out for me. And whatever that means to you, you got to have faith in something that's bigger than you. Because I promise you, at some point, if you're alone with no faith, you're going to hit some really rock bottom times that are going to be extremely difficult to get through. Have faith in something bigger than you. Second thing I want to talk to you about is family, okay? We all love family, for the most part, it seems. You know, I'm not talking necessarily about our blood family. I'm talking about people that we have in-depth, vulnerable relationships with. I told you I spent 13 years in the military. I had a lot of bros, a lot of beer drinking bros, a lot of go do wild things and be stupid bros. You see, I think that in American culture, we have very shallow relationships. We don't actually know each other. Think about your friends and your family. Do we talk about drama? Do we talk about complaints? Or do we actually get to the depth of our problems? Do we actually share the things that are going on deep inside of us? Can we trust the people that are around us that we say are our family and our friends, that if I was going through a hard time, I would call them? A 2 a.m. brother or sister. Do you have those in your life? So we've got to create more meaningful relationships, which means you've got to be vulnerable with people and allow them to be vulnerable with you. So I challenge you to start having more in-depth relationships, especially to the people that are around you, the people that you see every day. Start having a little more vulnerability and creating in-depth relationships. One of my favorite quotes is this, is that whenever we're feeling helpless, we need to become more helpful. Helpless, helpful. Think about this. If you've ever gone through a rough season or patch in your life, we tend to isolate. When we feel helpless, we become less. We pull away. We don't need help. Our pride kicks in. I'll be okay. And before you know it, we've created this distance between us and our friends and our family. They don't even know that we're going through a hard time. The opposite of that is being helpful. Now, trust me, I understand that when you're going through a hard time, a season of depression, maybe even suicidal thoughts, that the last thing that you want to do is be helpful to people. We're in survival mode. But let me tell you this, that if you were to reach out and become helpful to other people, that you would actually be more fulfilled in your life. It would actually help you get through a season. It would help you overcome it. And so in times where you feel helpless, try becoming more helpful and see if that helps you out. The last thing I want to talk to you about is fortitude. And fortitude is having the strength to make it through hard times, even when it's extreme adversity and difficulty. Have you all ever been through a hard time in your life and maybe did something that you didn't think you could do? Raise your hand if you've ever done something you didn't think you could do. You went through a season, you did something, maybe a physical event, you did something you didn't think you could do. There starts to become an awakening in us that, wow, I'm a lot stronger and more capable than I give myself credit for. You see, this time last year, March, 2 months after I nearly took my own life, I really wanted to show myself what I had in me. I kind of wanted to find out. You know, I went through this hard period mentally and emotionally, but I wanted to see what I was capable of and what I could really make it through if I put my mind to it. And so if you all know David Goggins, he had a challenge called the 4x4x48 challenge. You run 4 miles every 4 hours for 48 hours. 4 miles every 4 hours for 48 hours, accumulating 48 miles in 48 hours. Now, if you could guess by looking at me and cardio don't get along. I like to lift weights. I don't like to run. Anybody else here not like to run? Yeah, it's not fun. I don't like it. But that's part of the reason that I signed up for this challenge, was it was something that was very uncomfortable for me. It was adversity and pain that I would have to make it through when I didn't know I could. And so I set out at 6 a.m. on a Friday morning, and I breezed 4 miles, boom, easy. Went to my next 4 miles, 4 hours later, boom, just like running like the wind. This is easy. I had a fire in me. Another 4 miles, racking up 12 and 16, and things are still pretty easy. But then the night fell, and for some reason, things get a lot harder at night. You ever notice that? Like, even if you're not scared of the dark, things are just more difficult at night. And the hard part about this challenge is that even though you had a 4-hour break between runs, by the time I got in and showered, changed, and got a little bit of sleep, that I'd get about 2 hours of sleep before I went back out. And I don't know about you, but the last thing that I want to do at 2 a.m. on a Saturday morning is wake up after getting 2 hours of sleep and go run 4 miles when I'm already starting to feel broken. But I made it through. It was incredibly challenging. It was probably the hardest run mentally for me. But by mile 20 and 24, my body started to break down. My Achilles were fully tightening up. I could barely move and flex my ankle. And that night, finishing out the day 2, I had a photo shoot in Houston for my business. So I literally had to run 4 miles, get in my truck, my car, and drive 3.5 hours, and then run another 4 miles. And if you've ever sat for a long period of time after running, it's really a terrible idea. Everything really started tightening up now. And the fact that my Achilles were so tight that I could barely even walk. Now, our photo shoot was at a gym. And so while the photographer and all the models were out shooting photos, I ran on the treadmill. And I thank God to this day that I ran on a treadmill, even though I hate running on treadmills, because it at least had the rails. So the first mile, there's probably photos of me, I'm kind of just skipping off the treads. And it's given me, my upper body's getting tired, but it's given me a little bit of strength to carry through. But by mile 2, I could kind of hobble on my own. We're talking about mile 42 now. By the third mile, I'm actually starting to get a little bit of jog. And by the 4th, I'm at a full-blown sprint, ready to get this thing over with. So I finished mile 44. I knew I had 4 left to go. Made it downtown to my hotel in Houston and set out on the road a couple hours later, downtown Houston, through all the stoplights and traffic and all that. But that was probably a saving grace because I could barely move by this point. I honestly thought my Achilles tendons, both of them were going to snap. I was really digging for some fortitude. But in this, there was a fight in me. There was a line in me that said, you won't quit. That no matter what it takes, I'll crawl for 4 miles, but I refuse to quit. I refused to quit. And so I set out on that last 4 miles, literally could not move my ankles. And I got about a mile in, and luckily I had someone with me, Scarlett here, but she was with me that night. And I called her after the first mile, and I said, hey, I need your help. This is where that family comes in. And so she walked with me for the last 3 miles. I think my pace was about 26 minutes. It took me forever, but I finished. And after I stood there looking at the Houston skyline that night, I realized that I had a lot more strength in me than I ever gave myself credit for. And I believe that to be the same about you. No matter what it is that you do in your life, or no matter what you're going through, or no matter what you will go through, I want you to remember this, that there's a fight inside of you. Even though you feel helpless and alone at times, there's a fight inside of you. There's a lion inside of you that can go just another step, just another day. You all have an innate level of fortitude and strength inside of you, and I want you to never forget that. So over this last year of recovery from me, from being nearly suicidal to this place where I feel confident in myself and really just thriving in my life, I've come to understand a few things. It was that I needed a faith in something bigger than me. That's my God. I needed a faith in something bigger than me. I needed a family and a community. And I also needed to understand my internal strength and my fortitude. I needed to really understand what was inside me so I could make it through hard times. And here's the beautiful thing about this. Most of the time when we're going through a hard time, or we're trying to figure something out, we always go out to look for resources. We go buy books, maybe courses, talk to people. But here's what I want to tell you. That all three of these things, if you're looking for faith, I believe that you can just look up, open your heart, and trust and believe that there's something bigger than you in this world. I promise you that. And if you're looking for family and community, I promise you if you just look to your left and to your right, there's people that love you. There's people that care about you. And that when you pour into people, the law of reciprocity is real. They will also pour love back into you, and you'll need that in some time. And the last thing is that when you really dig deep inside of you, that you'll find that you're way stronger than you've ever given yourself credit for. That no matter what you go through, I promise you, you'll make it another day. Thank you.